What's up, everyone? Welcome to Hollywood Unveiled, where we pull back the curtain on the Hollywood entertainment industry and get to know the people behind the magic. I'm Jake.
And I'm Logan.
And Logan, today we have someone that's in front of the camera or in front of the microphone these days. Why don't you tell everybody about him?
Yeah, well, today we are talking to Yuri Lowenthal. You might not know the face all too well, but you've heard his voice everywhere. He's Spider-Man in the PlayStation Spider-Man games. He's most recently actually been in Mortal Kombat 1 as Smoke. You might know him as the voice of Ben Tennyson from Ben 10, He-Man and Prince Adam from Masters of the Universe, Sasuke from Naruto. Like, the man's everywhere in the voice acting community, and he is honestly just a fantastic human being.
I know.
Yeah.
And as we get into it in the interview, he's one of the very first people I met when I moved to Los Angeles, and I fell into this perfect group of amazing, friendly people, whereas had a great experience in Los Angeles, meeting all these wonderful, nice people, and he was right there among them. So I attribute a lot of my Los Angeles experience to Yuri directly, because he was such an influence. He showed me how important it is to just be a good person out here.
Yes.
You know. So, but without any further ado, why don't we just dive right into this interview? Here's Yuri Lowenthal. we got to work on our intros too now, don't we?
You know, we're so the whole thing we're working on.
Hey, brother, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm just we're hanging out again. And Logan, it's been so that I've seen you that I forgot who you were, which is embarrassing for me. But
it happens.
But I figured I would out myself early on so that everybody understands we're being very vulnerable and honest in this podcast.
Yes.
Well, for everybody listening or watching, Yuri was in a short film of mine called Here and After, and a little thing we did back in the day, 935 Zombies. And Logan was a makeup artist on both of those projects. And I mean, they were so long ago, so I forget who I am that I did them even, you know.
Okay, fair enough.
Jake directed him, he's like, I forget what I did here.
Right. And Jake, you and I go back even further than that. We met on other projects that other people were shepherding.
Oh, yeah.
Or other people were pioneering, or, you know, so early on. But we've worked on many projects even before Zombies, which was a while ago.
Well, we met, I believe, on set with John Gardner's web series Absolution, and
that is correct.
Something I was editing. Yeah, editing and producing.
I know you're interviewing me, but this is actually a test. Actually, Logan and I are punking you. We're going to test you on your past.
Oh, good.
Cue cards right here. Let's get
I think I was wearing a red shirt that day. Maybe it was.
Sorry, our survey says it was green.
It was green.
Lost a point.
Oh, damn. All right. Shit. Let's go back to that even. I mean, just for catching up sake, I mean, how did you meet John for Absolution?
You know, John, I met, it was just through an audition. It was either, you know, backstage or wherever he was auditioning for that series. I know he had just gotten into town. He's part of the Emerson Mafia, right?
Yeah.
Right. I just went in as an audition, and I actually auditioned for a different character, the killer, the serial killer guy, and did not get cast as that. I was obviously not sociopathic enough. So that was how I got introduced to John. And then, of course, you know, all the people surrounding John, the rest of the Emerson Mafia. How did you originally get involved with John?
With John, we went to high school together.
See, there you go.
Yeah, and then
he was you guys were in Hawaii together.
Yeah, and then he was a writer on the TV show that we did, and he was in a lot of sketch comedy with us, and we just
I wasn't sure how far back, but you guys have known each other forever already at that point.
I was a year ahead of him in school, and he was a writer on my show while he was still a senior in high school too, I think, and I was, you know, just kind of doing my thing on TV, but that was we go back.
And that's, you know, and I love that about this business. I love the people, like the family you make along the way.
Oh my God.
Because you can work on a great project and walk away with like nobody. You could work on a terrible project and walk away with some of your, you know, lifelong friends. It's just been interesting to see the people, you know, who have who I've stuck to.
Yeah. Yeah. And you were really one of the very first people I met out here too. And my wife is always telling me, you're really lucky that when you moved here, you found such nice people around you. Because she's a California girl, and she has come up in the production system as a PA and all kinds of things. And she's worked in studios, and she worked on shows like the Dr. Phil show. And she says, all production studios she's been, she says, you've seen the best of the best. I've seen the worst of the worst.
And you should have her on the show.
Oh, we will. We will.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, it's true. You've got to do that. I consider myself so lucky that I've gotten to meet so many cool people. But yeah, you have to surround yourself out here with cool people, because it's like Cece said, it's not always that way. Unfortunately, well, whatever it is about this industry can sometimes bring out the worst, most aggressive, cutthroat nature of people. But I will say, the people who I've been like, yoink, I'm gonna take you along. I'm gonna take you along. I'm gonna put your name in my Rolodex for okay, kids. Oh yeah. Now Rolodex is what we used to use instead of
it's like a cell phone contact list, but on paper.
But yeah. But yeah, I would always like write people's names down. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna save that person's card, or I want to work with that person again. I want to stay in touch with that person. Oh yeah. And I think that's so it's funny. Somebody asked me recently, somebody young who wanted to come out to wanted to be an actor, and they said, what do you recommend if I'm, I want to go out to Los Angeles and be an actor, and we went through some other things, but I basically boiled it down to, come out to Los Angeles, don't die. Like that was it. Because
good word of advice.
In essence, I think the longer that you stay out here, and the longer you stay involved, which means seeking out things and saying yes to all manner of things, even if you don't think they're going to get you somewhere, even if you don't think it's going to be the best thing you've ever done, the longer you do that, the more people you meet, and the smaller the city gets, because the city is just it's just a huge sprawl and seems completely unmanageable and a hellhole. But and I don't mean to paint LA with that, Los Angeles that brush, because
hellhole with love.
There are plenty of hellhole with I say it with love, because it can become that. But it can become very people can become disconnected out here, and I think the more you connect with people in whatever way you can, the smaller the city gets, and just the more opportunities that become open for you. Oh yeah. And if you treat all those people nicely, the people you've connected with, it gets better.
Oh yeah. And since we've been talking about where we came from, let's take it back. You started with where I came from, which is not why we're here.
Okay, fair enough.
Let's talk about where you came from. Like what got you interested in entertainment, period, and maybe where did it all start for you?
I think I've always been interested in entertainment, but I never looked at it as like a career opportunity, or like a career at all that like a regular person could do. And I, at that point, was very much, considered myself a regular person. Nobody in my family had any experience with it. And nobody I knew really had any experience with it. But I loved movies. And I loved stories, and I loved reading, and I loved writing, even at a young age. So there was a sincere love for that stuff. And then when I got to, I think it was high school, I wanted to like try out for a play. Like I'd never done anything like that before. And I wanted to, but I would always put it off to the next year. I'm like, oh, I'll try out for a play next year. I'm doing gymnastics, or I'm, doing, I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons, or I'm, hanging out with my, two friends, or, whatever it is. We're reading comic books. And then I got around to my senior year, and I think it was actually it started slightly earlier. In the end of my junior year, I did an English presentation. For the English class, you were allowed to, for your final presentation, to do whatever format you wanted to. And a friend of mine wrote a play for hers. And I had written some really weird thing about H.P. Lovecraft. But she had written a play, and she said, "Hey, Yuri, will you play the lead role in this play?" And I was like, okay, sure, yes. And it was just, English presentation in class, but it was, it was high school, and we were all very angsty, and it was a play about depression and suicide. And
it always is.
Right? I mean, that tracks, right?
Yeah.
And at the thing that actually really hooked me and got me excited about the play was at the end, I was supposed to slit my wrists. And all I could start thinking about was, how can I do the practical effects for that? How can I make that happen?
Logan,
I'm sure. Right. I know.
I appreciate that thought process.
Yeah. I knew this would hook you too. And I immediately started trying to figure out how I could do. She probably thought I would just sort of pantomime that and, the end of play. But I went home and immediately started coming up with ideas. And the idea I came up with was, my mom would sometimes get these little sample things of like conditioner and shampoo or whatever. And it was like a little pouch and with like a twist off thing. And then you squeeze the stuff out. And I'm like, oh my God, if I had that, but full of fake blood, I could put it under my watch, and then I twist it off when the time comes, and I squeeze it, and blood will drip out.
There you go.
Right? Classic. But you can't like twist it off and then squeeze it out and refill it and then put the thing back on. Like it's a one-shot deal. So what I did was I painstakingly, I poked a hole in the side of it, drained out the stuff, and then it took me out. Like, I spent more on this than I spent on learning my lines for the play, for sure. I spent hours and hours and hours and hours trying to get blood back in through this tiny hole. And it was stupid what I was doing, but it was very important to me. And then of course I couldn't. And then I put a dollop of a little dab of crazy glue over the hole to seal it.
Yeah.
But I'd spent so much time on that, I couldn't test it because I couldn't make another one. Like, it was a one-shot deal. So I'm like, this is gonna work.
Yeah.
And so we did the play, and it got to that point in the play where that was supposed to happen, and I planned it out. I got it. I put it under my watch. I rolled away on this, on the fake couch, away from the audience of, whoever was in class that day. And I went to twist off the thing, and it wouldn't twist off. And so, this wasn't supposed to be a long moment. I was supposed to, I had sort of, pretended already to slash my wrist. I'd rolled over, and I was trying to do this thing, and it wasn't working. But a professional actor would have dealt with it and just said, that's not going to work. Let's just play through it. But I had spent so much time, and it was so important to me, more important than the message of the play, obviously, that I kept trying, and it wasn't working. But I wasn't going to let it go. And so I went with my teeth to try to pull it off. So from the audience, I can only imagine it looks like I've slit my wrists, I've turned over, and now I'm trying to pull the veins out of my wrists with my teeth.
But could they even see your teeth in like your face or anything?
No, I was turned away from them. So it probably looked even worse. Like, it looked very,
you're in the fetal position, like sucking your thumb or something.
And I finally got it. And I turned back to the audience, but I'd only like gotten a little bit, and it wasn't like coming out very much. It was sort of, dribbling. Oh, no. And so I leaned into, like, I squeezed on it, and it sprayed into the audience.
Oh.
And it was
is this a classroom or a theater?
Yeah, it's a classroom. Yeah, sorry, classroom. Oh, but into the classroom audience. And it had suddenly become like a Monty Python gag, like I was just spraying. I'm sure I ruined her play, and I feel so bad. But afterwards, the sort of like the theater jock from school, Teddy Kim, came up to me. Like, he was always the lead in everything. He could sing, he was. He came up to me and he said, "Yuri, you penis, you should try out for plays." and I was like, yeah, I've always wanted to do that. And I realized that my next year, my senior year, if I didn't do it then, it wasn't like I was going to go to college and suddenly start trying out for plays. Like I didn't have that kind of confidence. So I auditioned for the drama class in the following year with the Jack Nicholson monologue from Witches of Eastwick, by the way, which I don't have those kind of balls today. I don't know why. I don't know how I did that, but I got into the drama class, and so I did I got to audition for the plays there. I also the English class, the English teachers did a Shakespeare play every year, and I auditioned for that. That was the first one that I actually got. That's the first part I got. We did Love's Labor's Lost, set in a computer camp because it was the 80s,
of course,
and the end of the 80s, but still the 80s. And then I was in the chorus for Pirates of Penzance. Because we do a musical every year, and the other play they were doing. And here's really where it locked in, was Dracula. And I was already a huge fan. Like I knew everything about vampires. Yeah. And oh my God, are you wearing a Room 237 shirt? Sorry, not Room 237 per se, but the Shining carpet.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I just noticed that. But so we were doing Dracula, and the way they did auditions was everybody from the drama class would sit in the audience, and you could come up, and like anybody who wanted to would raise their hand if you wanted to go up and audition for, read some, a page of the script or whatever. And I had really wanted to, I didn't want to play Dracula. I didn't want to play Harker. I didn't want to play Van Helsing. I wanted to play Renfield.
Mm-hmm. It's a good choice.
And because there were so many girls in the class, they had gender swapped a lot of the characters. So Van Helsing, for example, was going to be played by a girl. Mm-hmm. So they were only reading girls for that. And Renfield was also going to be a girl. But I wanted it so bad. Again, I was so excited about it that every time she would say, does anybody else, does anybody want to read? I would put up my hand every time, and she'd go, Yuri, we're casting a girl in this role. But I would still put up my hand every time. So finally at the end, she's like, all right, go ahead. And I think I was so
what you want, right?
Exactly. I think I was so excited about it. Mm-hmm. That after she saw my read, she's like, okay, yeah, you can play the role. You clearly want this more than anybody else in the world.
So you and I have that in common, because I too played Renfield in high school's Dracula, So
no, see, that's why we do these things, is because we learn more about each other. You are kidding me. Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
Well,
they said I deserved an award, but
see, you and I both deserved an award.
Yes.
And that award would be our friendship.
Exactly.
But I loved doing it, and it was great. And again, I had ideas for practical style effects. And there's a moment near the end of the play, no dialogue. It's just a stage direction, really. It says, it's right as they're looking for the coffin at the very end, mm-hmm. and they stake him. Like it's mm-hmm. almost the end of the play. The stage direction is something like they find Renfield in the darkness, and he goes scurrying off. Like they bump into him, he goes scurrying off into the darkness. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if, as he scurried off, he went and scurried like up a wall, like climbed a wall. Mm-hmm. And it's nowhere in the script, nor is that a power really that he had, unless you are thinking bug power, whatever.
But sure, why not?
But to Terry, our drama teacher, to her credit, I went to her and I said, hey, I've got this idea, but it involves me pounding masonry nails into the proscenium wall, in between some bricks, and putting glow tape so I can find them in the dark as I'm getting close, but you won't see it from the audience. And she said yes. Like I don't know why
What's
she
with
said
drama
that,
teachers that let high school kids do these crazy things, because
it's right. It's
here
the mark
too,
of a
buddy.
good teacher that then lets those that they say yes, and then their students go off to become professional actors.
Sure.
So you only get like 2 performances. Like in high school theater, you get like a Friday and a Saturday, and it's over or whatever. Mm-hmm. So we were doing the play that night, and I had practiced it, but I didn't know if it was going to work. And the moment comes, I scurry over to the wall. I grab the nails as I climb up the wall, just to hang there for a second and then drop down. And I grab the nails, and I'm up the wall, and I'm about to drop down. And I hear the entire audience behind me go, and I had done that to them. Like in that moment, something broke in me, like a good thing, like broke. Like all the other paths, I think what happened was all the other paths to any other thing that was going to make me happy in life as like a career broke and left only one. And while I didn't immediately go run right off to be a professional actor, I've been like chasing that dragon ever since. And I was in love with acting at that point and was always like doing stuff. I went to college. I was spending most of my time in theater. I took a job. I figured I'd do the family business, which was sort of international relations. I went off. I started working for the Japanese government. But anytime I wasn't in the office, I was watching movies or making stupid movies on, one of the first sort of small, affordable, video cameras that had come out with my friends, or like doing theater with, Australian theater companies or Japanese theater companies. Like I was spending all my time doing that. And after a couple of years of that, because my job was great. It took me to Japan. I got to work with nice people, but it was very bureaucratic. They were still allowed to smoke in the, in the office. Like our computers were super, super old. And I'm glad that it took me to Japan. I loved Japan then, and I still love it. But I didn't want to wake up like 30 years down the line and think to myself, wow, I always really liked acting. But it's been the last 30 years in this, dead end government job. So I figured that work would be there if I needed it. If that kind of work would always be there. I should go and try this now. And if it doesn't work, I'll just come back or find another job like this. And so I quit after 2 years of that and went to, try to decide. I knew it would have to be New York or LA. And I sort of visited both cities and hated Los Angeles and came screaming back.
Who wants to live there?
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Wait a minute. But I fell in love with New York. And so I spent the next 6 years, doing basement, black box experimental theater, which was sort of my grad school. But I never looked back at that point. And now I go into a panic when I think of, if this job goes away, what else would I do? And I just start to panic because I can't, I hyperventilate because I can't think of anything. But that moment in high school was where something changed. Like that it's funny that I can, like, there are all these things that I'm working through in therapy and I can't pinpoint, the moment that something broke that I'm, working on trying to fix, but I can find that one like that. Like that was a thing that happened that changed everything for me.
That's significant. And there are two massive takeaways that my ADHD brain picked up on. One, I've never heard the terms theater and jock go together before. And
I don't know that I've, I was trying to think of like, who was the guy that everybody loved, that always,
But you know what? I'll go with that.
Okay, great.
The other one is, you work for the Japanese government? What? What does that mean?
We've never. Well, of course, I'm not allowed to talk about it. If I tell you, I'll have to kill myself. Which is the opposite of working for the CIA, right? If it's Japan, you have to commit ritual suicide. No. I did it through a program called the Japan Exchange and Teaching Program, the JET program.
Oh, okay.
Which I was studying Japanese in school, and I was looking for a way, from past experience, I knew that the only way you can really learn a language is to go to the place and immerse yourself. And I was looking for some sort of job that would do that. That job was one of them. And so I interviewed for that just in my last year of college. I got that job, and I knew that once I graduated, I'd be going to Japan and working with English teachers who would come over from English-speaking countries to teach in Japanese high schools and junior high schools, and helping to coordinate them and coordinate with the local government offices that they were working in and everything. So
wow.
So that was
and you speak fluently, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably rusty now just because I don't speak it very often, but I can still fake people out.
How many languages do you speak? If I remember, you speak more than that too, don't you?
That's true. I grew up because my dad was worked for USAID, was in international relations. I grew up in West Africa, and I went to a French private school there. So I speak French, and I speak Japanese. My mom's native tongue is German, so I grew up with that. And there was a time when I was also studying it in high school, and I got really good, but I never did that immersion thing, and so it never stuck. So I'm sure if I went and lived somewhere where they only spoke German, and inside of 6 months, I'd be pretty back to where I was.
Do you find any of these useful for recording these days?
Yes and no. And I will tell because there's been a welcome shift in casting. Once upon a time, I played a lot of Japanese characters because it was voice only. But these days, they're casting actual, Japanese, or Japanese American or Asian American actors, which I think is great. But so that helped for a while. Then it helps a little bit, although it's not necessary when I dub Japanese anime. When we play the original, because when we're dubbing it, we still listen to the original line for each line right before we do it to make sure we're in the right headspace and we're communicating the same emotional stuff. And most people, I would argue, who do that don't understand the Japanese, obviously, but I do, or at least some of it. A lot of it goes by really fast, and a lot of it is vocabulary that I either never had to deal with, or super technological or antiquated ninja talk, ninja dialogue. But it gives me sort of an added layer there. Do you get to come in there with, like, if you're listening to it and you say, well, I know it's written this way, I could word it this way slightly, it might improve the mouth flaps or anything like that? I occasionally do that. I don't do that a lot because it slows things down. And
you wouldn't want to.
And it really only helps sometimes this much, and is it really worth going back and doing that? But every now and then, if something's not working, I will say, hey, will you play the Japanese again? I just want to hear what, and then sometimes we'll come up with something different, or I'll come up with an alt take that's closer to the Japanese, but I try not to slow things down. And honestly, the translators and the people who adapt the scripts into English usually do a great job. So there's not a lot left for me to do.
Okay. Yeah.
But accents, dialects, and stuff like that help a lot in my business. Yeah.
Yeah.
To change up my voice. Especially. You could, you may notice, the careful ear might notice that while I've played a lot of different roles, I rarely change my voice very much. I lean on the writing and the situation and the character to change it enough so that you're not like, hey, that's the same voice you did for that other character. So, but accents and dialects help mix that up a little bit too sometimes.
But this character's angrier. So
right. Exactly.
Well,
Sasuke.
There you go. Right. So where did that take you acting wise? What was the next thing that you came, you found yourself in New York.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah.
Right?
I did a bunch of, acting and stuff as much as I could when I was in Japan, sort of in my free time, and, performed, a bunch of theater stuff. And like I said, made a bunch of stupid movies with my friends. There was, it was a different time. So, and it was very, Tarantino heavy, and Japan is a different place. So like when I bought some replica firearms and got my friends and went down to my local video store and said, hey, we're making a movie. Can we pretend like we're robbing you? They were like, sure. No permits. No, we got to ask, the main office. No,
we've all been there.
No. Well, have you talked to the police? Like, I mean, they were realistic, firearm. They just let us do it. So I did that, and then came back. Like I said, went to decided on New York as the happy place for me. I think I either knew more people there. I think it seemed much more manageable. Like it was a smaller place to wrap my head around. Spent 6 of the best years of my life just being a broke actor. I'd saved up, just enough money from my Japanese job for 2 years to be able to settle in, find an apartment, which when I say apartment, it was a room between 2 other rooms in somebody else's apartment where they literally had to walk through my room to get to the kitchen. So like there was no privacy or anything. Right. It was a classic New York story. And I just started auditioning, I was just like doing odd jobs and started auditioning for plays and, whatever commercials or TV was shooting in New York. I didn't get a lot of TV and film work. It was mostly indie films and experimental theater and things like that. And at the same time, because it was really my only marketable skill that could make money, I was also working as a production coordinator for Japanese crews when they would come to town, film and TV people. I would help out with stuff, but that got old fast only because it felt like I was falling back on what I had left. Because while it was in the industry, I was like catering to talent, and I was a sort of support staff. I wasn't getting to tell any of the stories. I wasn't getting to act. I wasn't getting to do all the things that I came out here to do. And so after a while, I kind of had to give that up, even though it was helping pay the rent. And instead took just a regular temp job at a bank, which offered me the flexibility to go to auditions. And they thought I was adorable. They were like, "Oh, you have an audition today? Go get him, kid." And you have to make sure. Here's the thing: a lot of people are like, "Well, I don't want to, get like a day job like that," and it's hard because they don't want you to leave for auditions, and then I'm wrapped into this job that I still don't get to do the thing that I came out here to do. And I'm like, well, you have to set your boundaries early. Like every time I would go into an interview for a temp position, I would say, look, here's my deal. I need this kind of flexibility. And if I can get that, if that works for you guys, I will work my ass off for you. But if that's not, if that's not comfortable for you, I totally understand. You can go on to the next person. And I just did that until somebody agreed to that. I worked at Citibank for many years. It was a great job. I worked with great people, and they gave me that flexibility. I was still working at a bank, or in a bank corporate office, but that was what allowed me to do, to keep going. But it wasn't the kind of job that, it was soul sucking in that any cubicle job is, but it didn't lure me away from what I really wanted to do.
No, that's great. Transparency and communication with anybody you're working with is always important. And if you can, you just upfront with something like that, then people can be far more understanding about it, right?
Yeah. And that was the lesson I had to learn. Like I used to sort of hide it because I was afraid they wouldn't want to hire me. But then they would hire me, and I would ask for it, and it would become a problem. Or I'd be afraid to ask for it, and then I get mad at myself.
How did the acting experience evolve from there in New York?
Well, I started building I'd already started building, some of the people that I knew in Japan are still part of my, my industry family, or I'll just say my family now, because, I love the industry so much, and I've met so many great people. But I started building some of those relationships, people that I loved to work with. I did a lot of, theater. It was really kind of like unofficial grad school for me, just auditioning for everything and doing, weird plays and, not weird plays, and plays where most of the time there were more people on stage than there were in the audience. It was certainly not for the money. And I think cemented my love for this. And then I met Tara doing who would become my wife. And I met her doing an NYU grad film. And when she went off when her agent, we'd been dating for about 6 months. And when her agent said, "Hey, Tara, it's time for you to come out for pilot season," she said, "Okay. Hey, Yuri, I have to go for pilot season. I'm going to pick up my car in, Michigan from my family's place. And I'm going to drive out there." And I was like, "We've been dating 6 months. I'll road trip with you." And, the short version of that story is we ended up getting married in Vegas on that road trip. I proposed in Bowling Green, Ohio. We got married in Vegas, and all of a sudden she was in Los Angeles, and I had to go back to New York because we really hadn't planned certainly to get married. And we planned she would be out there for 4 months for pilot season. And, she would either stay out there or come back, and we'd figure it out then. But after about 3 weeks or a month of me back in New York, and I had just gotten married, but my wife was out in Los Angeles, I was like, what am I doing? And so I gave up my very cushy sublet on the Upper West Side, and moved out to Los Angeles. And that was where, different opportunities, like I probably could have been happy, temping during the day and doing experimental theater, at night and on weekends in New York. But there are different opportunities in Los Angeles. There are more opportunities to make a living.
Mm-hmm.
And when we both got out here, we started auditioning and writing scripts. Like when we were cooped up in, our little studio apartment in Koreatown, just waiting on, auditions and things like that and sending out, getting new headshots and all that stuff. Tara is super motivated. Like it took me forever to write my first feature when I was in New York, my first feature script. And I belabored this and that. And she's like, hey, I bet here, let's brainstorm an idea. I bet we could write a script in a week. And I'm like, you're a crazy person. It took me 2 years to write that, and she's like, I think we could do it. And we did. We wrote it in a week. She just, we sat next to each other and we just sat down and we just wrote. And so we wrote a few scripts like that. And in the meantime, we were looking for, we were temping and doing the same sorts of jobs that we were doing, we'd been doing before then, to make a living. And she said, well, what other things can we do, acting wise to make money so that it's not just temping all the time? And she said, well, what about voice acting? Which is, it's crazy that I didn't think of that first, because like I'm the resident nerd in our family. Like I grew up watching anime and playing video games and watching cartoons and, all that. Like I should have thought of that as like a job, but they don't in theater school, like they don't teach you, or maybe they do now. But back then they didn't even list that as a thing you could do, voice acting. And in my head, it was like, yeah, there are 5 people who do those jobs. There's like Mel Blanc and whoever else, but there are like 5 people and nobody else. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, I wouldn't even know where to get started there. And she's like, well, let's find a class then. And so we found a class, and this guy named Rick Zeef, who we're friends to this day. He's a great actor, great teacher. We did a demo together, and he ended up getting a job while we were in class, directing an anime dub. And he started auditioning his students, and I auditioned and got a role, SD Gundam Force. And that was what introduced me to the dubbing community and the sort of the voiceover community at large. And, it just, the more I did, the more I did, I guess.
So with this kind of early kind of, introduction into the voice work and that, was there a particularly memorable project that, other than, the SD Gundam, that you feel kind of cemented that as a viable kind of path for you?
Yeah. The dubbing, as I did a dub, I did that first dub, and I met some of the other dub actors, and they're like, hey, we've never seen you before. And then they would probably ask, well, after I left, they probably asked Rick, hey, is that guy any good? And it's like, well, he smells nice and he shows up on time, and, and he's pleasant to work with. And they're like, great, we'll introduce him to somebody else. So I, that was where the dubbing, and Tara also got in, through that. And that was sort of our entree. But it ties back in a funny way to my Japanese, because I was doing mostly dubbing at that point, the occasional, commercial spot for VO. And one of the coordinators from one of the dubs, a Japanese coordinator, was working on something for Warner Brothers. It was they were doing several episodes of Teen Titans that were set in Tokyo. It was Teen Titans Trouble in Tokyo.
Yeah.
And they were looking for people to fill out sort of the background cast, one-liners and, background wall and things like that, people who spoke Japanese. And she knew that I spoke Japanese from working with me in the dubbing community, and ended up bringing me in for that over at Warner Brothers. And it was my first time going in and doing, like prelay animation for, Warner Brothers, like a not dub job.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I worked with Andrea Romano. And, it was a bit awkward, because it was me and then a bunch of Asian and Asian American actors in the room, and I kind of had to be like, hey, I don't know, I'm here, but I'm gonna speak Japanese, and but that was sort of my introduction to that part of the world, which is the dubbing community is amazing. I owe it everything, and I still love to do it, but it doesn't pay very well as far as these things go. So that led me to, the type of work where you get residuals, and where the day rate is a lot better. And And then the next thing I ended up auditioning for and then recording over at that same studio was Legion of Superheroes, where I got cast as Superman. And there was a part of me that just wanted to retire then,
Yeah.
Almost 20 years ago. I was like, it's like, nope, it's not going to get better than Superman.
Yeah.
But
and obviously didn't, I mean,
No.
so
I know.
I know
all
that times have
downhill.
been tough.
All
Times have been
downhill
tough
from
for
there.
you, yeah. So, so I mean, looking at that, I mean, you've had a crazy, awesome list of these high-profile characters that have come your way. I mean, was it just like one after another where when they happen, you're like, oh, I can retire. No, now I'm going to retire now. No, now I'm going to retire now.
Well, it didn't happen one right after another, but I will say that, being, somebody who's in this business who started out as a huge nerd and, continues to nerd, when those jobs come along, they get a special like red check mark next to them, and like,
oh yeah,
yes, I mean, everybody gets a yes when I get a job. I get, it's a yes because, it's a job, and and there's no, a lot of people are like, where you are in your career at this point. Do you even have to audition anymore, or do people just throw jobs at you? And I'm like, oh, that's adorable. Yeah. That once in a blue moon, somebody's like, hey, I really liked you in this. We're thinking of you for this. Would you do it? And I'm pretty much always yes. But I still audition, if I'm lucky, multiple times a day. Like I'm always auditioning, and I still only book, like 1 or 2%, of the jobs that I audition for. But there are certain jobs that mean more to me because I grew up reading comic books and watching movies. And, when I got into this business, I was like, oh man, I grew up on Robotech, and I wish that were still around because I would love to be a part of that. But it's over, and that chance is lost. Moving on. And then they did this, one-off, direct-to-video movie called Robotech: The Shadow Chronicles, and I auditioned and got to be in it. Like anytime it's like, grew up with Robotech, got to do that. Grew up reading comic books, get to be Spider-Man. Anytime there's like a direct-to video, DC movie, like I'll audition, and I'll be like Mirror Master, or something like that.
Sure.
People are like, we don't even know who that is. And I'm like, well, I do.
Yeah.
And that's important to me. And, or, the Flash, even if you got, like 2 lines before, he dies in Injustice, spoiler alert, but it's been out for a while. Like all just with both hands, So I mean, those are, they don't come, one right after another every day.
No.
And each time, I'm like, oh, I could probably retire after this, but my nerdiness is so like vast. Like, I'm like, but there's so much more that's out there that's been unexplored, or so many more opportunities. I'll still keep auditioning for Batman, even though they never cast me as Batman, or, just they haven't done, a BPRD, series yet. Maybe I could be a part of something like that.
Unless they tell me to stop showing up.
Right. Exactly. People are like, how long, you do this? And I'm like, I can't imagine a reality. Like I may have to back off, I may have to, cool my jets a little bit after a while, just because,
sure,
I've been doing it for so long, but I can't imagine ever not doing it. Like as long as they'll let me, I mean, I just love it too much. And there, there may come a time when, they find the, newer, younger, handsomer, whatever, cooler, Yuri Lowenthal, and they're out there and they're already, trust me, plenty, I remember how hungry I was when I came up. Like,
well, isn't that, I'm looking for a so-and-so type. You know better. I'm
or
sure.
It's who it goes from who is Yuri Lowenthal to get me Yuri Lowenthal to get me a Yuri Lowenthal-Type. Was that what it was?
The one.
Something like that.
And then it goes back to who's Yuri Lowenthal.
Who's Yuri Lowenthal? Right. Exactly. Yeah. So we may reach that stage, but I'll ride the train as long as there are tracks.
Well, it seems like right now, at least the get me Yuri Lowenthal phase is still going pretty strong. I have to say, what really excited me and made me so happy to see was that they included you in the Spider-Verse movie.
Well, because of the current strike, I am not allowed to discuss feature animation films. But I will say I am a fan of those films, and I think they made some very strong choices. in including the Insomniac Spider-Man in that movie, and it must have been very exciting for whoever did that.
I loved there was a joke about like people not knowing that it's a video game character being like, what, does that Spider-Man just not sleep? I don't quite get the insomnia.
Yeah. I love it. That didn't even occur to me. Oh my God. Yeah. Because his credit is Insomniac Spider-Man. But if you don't know the video games, you're like, what, does he drink a lot of coffee?
Exactly.
That's hilarious.
Got that weird spider energy.
I know I said nothing. I apologize because I know I said nothing was off limits, but it occurred to me that's one thing that we still can't talk about. But you and I can talk about it later. I just can't promote it.
Bringing it back to the career, what sort of preconceptions might you have had about what you're currently doing that were either dispelled or confirmed for you?
Two things immediately come to mind. One is that my preconception was that I could ever do this as a career. I would never have considered in my young life that this is something that I could be doing as a job. So follow your dreams, because it can happen. And the other one is that, and this is a funny one, I would have assumed that, because before I got into this part of the industry, I was doing theater and TV and film stuff like that. I came out to Los Angeles to be a movie star, like everybody who does. And I would have assumed that, and I couldn't have made this exact assumption because games were not what they were 20 years ago or 20 plus years ago when I started. But now I would have assumed that with this many credits and this many games and this many things that, that people love, or, big budget, whatever, that an on-camera casting director, like a TV or a film casting director, would be like, oh my God, this guy's famous. We should consider him for something, or we should, at least look at his audition or ask him to audition, whatever it might be. But in an interesting turn, none of those credits mean anything to anybody outside the games industry or animation industry. Nothing. As a matter of fact, they are often a liability, because if my on-camera agent, for example, sends in an audition, and the casting director goes to the IMDb and sees 800 plus credits, they're like, this is some sort of trick. I've never heard of this person. How could they have this many? Like it gets weird. Or they're like, yeah, but that's video games and animation. That's not real acting, and I think, I think it's changing. But so that experience, and that cloud or whatever from that part of the world does not transfer to the other side at all. And I think perception might be changing a little bit because of what games have become, both as an industry that makes money, but also the types of games, how games are made, and, the level at which, they can execute characters and story in games, and the way that we're sort of doing it now. When I first started, there was no mocap for actors. They would get stunt people to do that, and then they just do the VO later. But now they often look at casting when they're casting in video games. They're like, if they know that there's going to be a lot of performance capture, they try to cast somebody who could do both.
Yeah.
And that never used to be a consideration, really, when I first started. So I mean, it's definitely changing, but I never would have thought that. I would have thought that if you're an actor and you do an acting thing, that those experiences will tally up and will make you a more desirable commodity, or a more desirable actor or whatever. But it doesn't always translate, and that's something that that has surprised me.
You mentioned getting into the world of mocap. That I think is really interesting. What was that first day like for you on any mocap set, or because you're introducing a brand new tool to the acting?
I'll tell you all about it. And it was for a racing game, and they ended up scrapping all of the mocap that we did for it. But it was a director who I'd worked with on a lot of voice stuff, who coincidentally, Chris Zimmerman, is the performance director on Spider-Man.
Nice.
But she brought me in. She had not had a lot of. She had done some, I think, but had not had a lot of experience directing mocap. But she knew me really well, and I think probably what she was trying to do is bring in people that she was really comfortable working with and trusted. And I went in, and I was so nervous because I was like, they're gonna figure out that I've never done this before, and they're just, I'm gonna get fired. I'm gonna do everything wrong. And so I talked to a couple people who had done more, and they're like, don't worry about it. Just go in. Here's the one thing you need to know. At the beginning of each take and at the end of each take, they're going to say T-pose. And it's just like a neutral position with your arms out. And you just need to know that when they say T-pose, you just know you just hit it. And everything else will pretty much come clear. You're going to have to get in the suit. You're going to look ridiculous. You can't look cool in it. Give over any idea that you'll ever look cool in a suit like that. And they were pretty much right. Like, I was nervous going in, but then it was just like, and it was, that day it was me and Nolan North was there. And I remember like, I already like knew Nolan a little bit but he was already like, the guy at that point. This is like post Uncharted. But I just realized it was like doing a play again. It was just a bunch of actors playing pretend because, they don't have any of the stuff that they sort of suggest cars and things like that are just boxes, with dots on them or whatever. And you just have to imagine the thing. But it was actors acting with other actors, which I had sort of gotten out of the habit of in just, being a guy in front of a mic, acting to a mic with the director on the other side of the glass and no other actors around. I'll always prefer to have other actors in the room with me whenever possible. They make me better and it's more fun. And if like if those cinematics, in the first Spider-Man game, made you cry, or you love them, it's because we shot them like a movie, or like it's like we were doing a play. Because it was a bunch of actors in a space together, reacting off each other. And I love that most. I think because I love like people and working with people and working in groups. That always makes me happiest. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that first day was nerve-wracking going in, but I came out the end of it going, oh, I get it. Like, there are a couple of technical things that you need to learn, but once you've got that, it's just doing theater again.
Well, I'm glad it worked out.
Yes, thank you. Me too. I still don't feel like I can rest on my laurels, and I still bust my ass all the time.
Sure.
Because I know, again, I know that as soon as I stop busting my ass, there's somebody hungrier and more talented that'll step right in.
A Yuri Lowenthal-Type.
A Yuri Lowenthal-Type, exactly. I knew I had made it when I was auditioning for something. And here's a funny thing. It's happened a couple times now. In the spec, it said Yuri Lowenthal-Type, and both times that I've read for that, I haven't gotten it.
That's hilarious.
I do. Yeah. I've noticed that seems to be a trend where it's when they're looking for a certain type, and you're like, oh, I am that type
because I'm literally that. Right. I'm literally that.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm gettable. I'm right here.
Yeah. I'm right here. I'm already saying yes.
Hey, Yuri, I know you got to go. Thank you so much for everything, for all of this. This has been a fantastic conversation. And please, we need to do a part 2. And
I would love to do a part 2 because you like asked me questions even before going into this. You're like, make sure to send me this information so we can talk about it. And we haven't touched on any of it.
Oh my God. Yeah. That's usually
and
how
maybe
these
that was
things
just,
go, too.
I was going to say, maybe that was just backup in case we found that we were stalling, didn't have anything to talk about, but I would love to talk about some of those things. So I would love to come back.
It's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B there, really.
Okay, fair enough.
But thank you again. Thank you so much for coming out here and chatting with us, brother. It means the world to us.
Thanks for having me. It's good to see your faces again and see anybody's faces. This is nice.
All right, brother. You take care.
All right.
I'll get you back soon.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks.
All right, Logan. That was a fantastic interview. And
like I haven't been super big in the con scene, so like hearing him tell certain stories, it was like, oh, like fascinating stories about kind of how he got to where he is.
I mean, there's so much that I wanted to chat about because we've worked together on a number of projects. As we were saying, one of the first things we worked on was called Absolution. I suggest people check it out. It's on YouTube. It's available. Absolution, the series, directed by John Gardner. and that's probably the best way to find it. But he did an amazing there. He's very brooding in it, and and his incredible performance by him and his wife Tara Platt. They both do an incredible job in that, and I'm also so grateful that they both do an incredible job in my short film, Here and After, which happens to also be online right now. So, but not plugging that, but
I plug. You said like I'm not going to go rewatch it when we're done here.
Oh, right. Yeah. And amazing makeup effects by Mr. Logan Horberg there too. So, you know.
Yeah. You're one of the people where it's like, if ever you're like, so I need makeup, I'm like, done. What does it matter what it is? No.
I mean, I'll take it. And I'm always grateful for it. I hope you know that. But yeah, there was so much I wanted to talk to Yuri about that we just didn't even get to because time and such. Because I could talk to Yuri for hours and hours. One of them that I did want to get into was Shelf Life and talking about his producing career as well, because he does so many things. And Shelf Life is this really awesome, I'll say, adult humor series that he and a bunch of other actors, including Tara as well, produced and starred in, and it is pretty incredible stuff. And man, I can't wait to get into that stuff next time we get into the producing aspect of his career as well. So but Logan, for now, why don't we tell people where they can find you?
I'm on Twitter for as Film Guy 89, Instagram Film Guy 1989. I'm findable.
There you go. And I'm at VFX2Go is on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads. You can find our website, vfx2go.com. And I believe you can find us on Instagram at Hollywood Unveiled Podcast. And for now, I've been Jake.
And I've been Logan.
And one of these days, we will have a great closing.
Oh, the outro it'll flow from us, but not today.
One of these days, we'll figure out how to do a good, proper closing. So.
Yeah. It's going to be a while.
Yeah.